Ladies and gentlemen, dear fellow EU citizens, I'm pleased and honored that I was invited to bring some of my ideas and arguments considering European meaning structure and concept of freedom to this high-level political panel. Speaking of freedom, could not find a more distinguished and appropriate forum than here in Estonia in your centennial year, I think. In Europe, every political agent speaks about values, about human rights, about fair trade, about social security and justice, about equality of all human beings, about stopping the climate change, about right of well-being to everyone. So far, so good, one could say. And yet I have the feeling that all in this proud and loud European value talk is not rattling right. Something is missing. And that something is the great common vision or the promising bright future or the ultimate goal of our much valued culture and society of freedom. I cannot help but think that European people do not know to which end they really want to lead the historical process. And yet the process goes on. It cannot be stopped. So it would be once again time to consider the very basic ideas of human nature and goals of human development. That I will try to do. I come from the country that is regularly ranked in the podium of the World Championships of Well-being, as you maybe know. Even the World Happiness Index tells that Finland is one of the happiest nations in the planet. Well, as a Finn, I must confess I am not convinced. When I look in the eyes of my fellow citizens, especially during the winter time, or in the statistics of public health, or alcohol consumption, of misuse of drugs, of crimes, of costs of social work, of child welfare, and of marriages and divorces. The picture of so-called social well-being or happiness seem to be quite contradictory. Just for example, the general level of criminal behavior is now 3 times higher than it was in the beginning of 1960s, when the development of welfare state was just emerging. The explanation of this confusing fact offered by relevant research is quite enlightening. Crimes of property get more common when there are more possibilities to commit crimes. So when there are more people living a richer life closer to each other in better material conditions in the cities, it leads to more crimes in numeric terms. The other basic types of crimes is violence, and this statistical data follows the statistical data of alcohol consumption, which is now 3 or 4 times higher than it was in the beginning of 1960s. So, more prosperity and more alcohol consumption together raise the general level of criminal behavior. That means that well-being causes ill-being. Or, in other words, what was planned to produce good life produces bad life. Or, yet in other terms, what begins as a free hedonism ends as enslaving addiction. So I would like to state that the Nordic welfare model or the society of well-being cannot understand or solve these kind of problems, because the philosophical grounds of welfare state are based in a wrong or outdated concept of freedom. This same problem is actually part of a political philosophy in every kind of liberal democracy. So, it is my main argument that we need a new concept of freedom. After this reform of freedom, the liberal society can take a leap to a new level, and our culture can once again turn vital, promising and future-oriented as it should be, and not to decline, to Untergang, to fall down in the way Spengler was already prophesying 100 years ago. Freedom is a second-degree system, I think. There is no use in waiting for the victory of this or that value system or way of life in our liberal democracy. Different value systems and ways of life compete and complete each other in a healthy liberal society. This rule is, of course, mainly accepted by every political party and line of thought, which try to win followers and as much as possible. However, what is quite often missing is the profoundly understood strong value system of freedom, which I think is the most important condition for the progressive politics we obviously need just now in our modern societies. Freedom should be stated and understood as a goal of politics, not something which is already there, built in our human nature. If we take this seriously enough, perfection of human freedom could become the end of dynamic history, the end that is infinitely desired because its final state is unattainable. If the set goal is unattainable, say hope of freedom and justice, the pursuing of that goal keeps us busy forever. I can see two competing moral traditions in Western culture, including two different ways to picture the highest good and the ultimate goal of the cultural evolution. First one is eudaimonism, good life, well-being, happiness, and it comes from the Greek and Roman philosophy. And its iconic picture nowadays, quite paradoxically maybe, could be happy Buddha. It's quite popular nowadays. I actually have the picture of happy Buddha here. And what is important here in this picture, you can see the enlightened happy Buddha, that in this picture the contradiction of human nature, it's excluded. The problem is solved. So there is not anymore the contradiction between nature and culture. Nature meaning causal determination and culture meaning free choice. There is harmonia. And another moral tradition is monotheism. That means ethical perfection, well-doing, righteousness, and it comes from Judaism in Western culture. And iconic picture for this line of thoughts could be, I try to put it now, yes, could be Christ, very well-known iconic picture. This is actually icon from 600 and it's in a monastery of Catherine in Sinai mountain. And what is important here is that the contradiction is included. Actually, you can see it. There are two different kind of faces. This one is in agony, and this one is there's no pain, no agony. It's like enlightened. It's like Buddha. So, in this, I would like to say the monotheistic Western Judaistic tradition, the contradiction is included, and passion means both desire, and it means both suffering. So, I think it is possible to mix these traditions partly, but it is definitely not possible to unite them. After the traumatizing 20th in modern history, communism, National Socialism, Second World War, Holocaust and Gulag, the Western culture has focused more and more on well-being and happiness, which are easily achieved and sufficiently demonstrated by surveys and data collected in ideological memory of society. This means that our culture is step by step moving to the stagnation and empty space without strong challenges. From the Spenglerian Untergang des Abendlands point of view, one could even argue that the badly wounded Western civilization has raised its hand and is waiting for some other strong value system to come. For example, Chinese Confucian communist collectivism. Well, the law of life is active overcoming. Infinite transcendence and waste of power, not only self-preservation, ecological adaptation and energy saving. This important and forgotten view lies behind the concept of will to power by Nietzsche. Utilitarianism and other thought systems supporting the well-being ideology depicts the life in line of Darwin and his economical way to understand the forms of living nature. Nietzsche's will to power challenges this assumption, and I think his view is even more convincing than Darwin's when we look at the history of the humankind. At least the Western cultural evolution is not based on adaptation, survival instinct and energy saving. On the contrary, humans as cultural beings do not respect the limits at all. Actually, we drive for unattainable goals and always try to achieve more than is possible to realize in present conditions. This burning driving force is maybe hidden in life itself, as Nietzsche taught, but certainly it is evident in human history, which will never find its happy end or turn around. To my mind, this growing will to power is evident also in individual human life. After the death of God, noticed first by Hegel and then by Nietzsche, the salvation and infinite life is no more the transcendent goal of whole Western culture. Nevertheless, the transcendence as such did not die. It only got inside of humans. I would like to state that this is the very condition of modern human individual who tries to find meaningfulness or hope to her or his life. The sense and meaningfulness of life is possible to touch only by immanent transcendence, which means overcoming oneself again and again and again. The contradictory force of culture is now inside of us, and we really feel its demanding power. That is why the borderline appeals us, and whenever possible we transcend our limits, trying to attain the attainable. Some well-being therapists and other healing professionals may think this is bad for your health, but I think that this endless dialectics of the unattainable, as I have named it, is the only endlessly dynamic way to fulfill the deepest life potentials we are achieving as free individuals. So, I conclude that the passionate immanent transcendence is the winning virtue of the modern man. It is obvious that we need a moderate well-being, but it is not the goal of humanity. It is only one of the basic conditions of cultural and moral evolution of the humankind. As I already stated, we can not take freedom as an inborn and given capacity of our species Homo sapiens. On the contrary, we should view freedom as our most valuable goal, which we can only gradually and to some degree achieve. However, and this is very important, the constitution of liberal democracy was rooted to the philosophy of freedom by John Locke and other thinkers of that historical period, which gave birth to modern civil society and state of free individuals during 17th and 1800. They were quite sure that we humans are created by divine creator who has given us inborn rationality and free will. As we now know, after Darwin and evolution studies, the evidence of the modern free science has pictured us in a more prosaic way. There is no other essential human nature than the nature of bipedal animal species Homo sapiens. Rest of us is culture, which is product of human history. Every aspect of our freedom is made and kept only by our own moral choices, which indeed require free will as a condition for the ability to choose between different courses of action. First in our mind, in our consciousness, and secondly in real action. Actually, the latter requires also an ability to break the causality of natural world we live in, and it may be only an illusion. Anyhow, the innate free will of human nature is for sure an illusion. I can now point out my main statement again in more general level. The illusion of natural freedom has become more and more appealing and even authoritative assumption of our conventional liberal thinking, which is the leading ism of our time. All the unhealthy problems in ways of life, in social morals and in social policy are products of this illusion. If we want to overcome these problems, we should first consciously regenerate the concept of freedom and then change the perspective in health services and social policy. When we read the constitution of a liberal national state, we should connect liberty and responsibility of free individuals. That would call a new way of understanding the basic rights and duties as well. For example, the health and well-being of free individual is not so much product of public services as it is of his or her own free choices. What public health services can do is to require commitment to healthy way of life. Actually, that would be a logical part of the insurance agreement if its goal is the health of the insured. To make this point a general attitude as politics, I argue that public social policy should change from well-being policy to well-doing policy, which would in practice means that we do not give resources to free and healthy individuals without requiring agreements of commitments by themselves. That would cause a historical turn in liberal social policy, and it should encourage the freedom of an individual by taking his or her autonomy as a most important factor in calculation of results. Now, I would like to thank you for your attention for this call of freedom, and my sincere congratulations to the occasion. Your Estonians truly know and cherish the value of freedom, I think. Thank you.